So glad you're here with us tonight as we are celebrating that Emmanuel, God is with us. And regardless of wherever you came from, however you came in, that is good news, that God is with us. And we celebrate tonight that the light has come. And this is one of my favorite services of the year. I don't know how you feel about candlelight service, but for me, it is one of my favorite things in the church. It always has been, even as a kid. And I remember many of these services, but there's one service I really remember exactly 10 years ago from today. Or 10 years ago to this day, I was at another church. I was an associate pastor, and we were having candlelight services, such as this. And at that church, we had a tradition where my senior pastor always for this service wanted to have a surprise gift. That every single service on candlelight, he would give away a brand new, beautiful puppy to a lucky child in the room. Now, I'll just go ahead and break some hearts to the kids. I don't have a puppy. I'm sorry. I don't have one to give to you right here, but I know that also will hopefully relieve some anxiety for the parents in this room where you're saying, thank you. I'm glad you don't have a puppy with you. But my pastor, he would bring a puppy, and what would happen is parents would have their kids put their name in the hat out in the lobby. Then during the service, the pastor, right before he would preach, would bring that puppy on stage. He would pull a name out of the hat, call it out, and of course, a cute little kid would come running down the aisle very excited. Well, on that night, 10 years ago, I remember seeing this puppy come up to the stage, this beautiful little yellow lab, just this beautiful, cute little dog. And I remember I was in the audience watching him on stage, and this lab comes up, and then I hear the name read out loud, and it was a kid I knew. It actually was a kid that was one of my buddies. It was his daughter, and I heard her name called, and I thought, good for her. And of course, she ran down the aisle, was excited, got the puppy, went back. But the story continued a little, because then later that day, I went online. I got on social media that night, and I saw my buddy make a post with actually that picture, that cute little doggy picture, and he said something that caught me off guard. He said, I really don't know what to do about this. And I was thinking, oh no, what's he thinking? And so I texted him. I said, what's going on? He said, I really don't know if we can keep that dog. And I was like, well, didn't you know what you were getting into? He said, I didn't know my daughter signed up. I don't know how this happened. He said, we can't keep that dog. He said, we just bought a house with white carpet. I've already got a little dog. I don't want a big dog, which is what that little dog will become. And I said, well, buddy, if you're really going to break your daughter's heart, I'd be happy to take your dog. I said, I'd love to have your dog. And he said, well, let me sleep on it, think about it. Now, keep in mind for us in our household, Bethany was pregnant with our firstborn child. We were due just a few weeks later. Now, wise parents usually buy a dog first and kind of figure that out for a few years, then you have a baby. We decided, you know what, let's just have a little animal baby and a human baby all at once, and let's just rip off the Band-Aid on learning responsibility. So we just decided, you know what, this is a good idea. If he'll give it, we'll receive it. Well, he called me on Christmas Day, the next day, and I saw my phone light up, and I had a little smile on my face, and I picked it up, and I said, hey, and he said, hey, I've got good news for you. He said, if you still want the dog, she's all yours. And that was good news for me on Christmas Day. In fact, it was so good, it brought great joy into my household. And the reason why is every good gift always brings great joy. And I thought it was so fitting that I was given that gift and I received that good news on Christmas, because that is what Christmas is. Christmas is good news that leads to great joy. And I don't know where you're at. You might live in a world filled with bad news. But today, if you're in Christ Jesus, I want you to hear me. You have good news. Good news that can lead to great joy. And tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to look at just 3 simple verses. And we're going to look about 2,000 years ago where God actually made a call to deliver some good news. Didn't come through a phone or a text message. It actually came from an angel to some shepherds. But that angel proclaimed that there is good news that can lead to great joy for all people. But the only way you can receive that great joy is if you pick up the call and you receive that perfect gift. So if you have your Bible, join me. Luke chapter 2 is where we are. Luke chapter 2. I'm going to read 3 simple verses about this perfect gift of Jesus Christ. Beginning in verse 8, we're told, in the same region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night, and an angel of the Lord appeared to them. And the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with fear. So we're told it's the same region. What region? It's the region in the preceding 7 verses. It's Bethlehem. And if you were here the last several weeks, we actually talked about those verses, that Mary and Joseph were led to Bethlehem. And you remember Caesar Augustus made the decree to get them to show up so they could be recorded in that census. But we talked about how God was the one who made the decree through a human leader, because God had to get Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem, because God said that's where the Christ would come 700 years before. So in this same region, near Bethlehem, in the preceding verses, we're told Mary and Joseph get there. They have that unexpected moment, that moment of delivery where there's no room in the inn, and they find themselves with the dirty animals near the manger. And we're told in that same area, around that same time, there are some shepherds that are keeping watch over their flock at night. Shepherds always watched over their flocks. That was their job. But at nighttime, they actually would secure their flock. The flock, they would graze, they would eat, they'd be led out to the pastures during the day, but at night they would be locked away into the sheepfold for protection and security, away from enemies and thieves and wolves. But at night, the shepherds would actually rotate to keep watch, to watch over those sheep as they rested. And we're told at that time, an angel of the Lord shows up with a call of good news. Now, you see how the shepherds first respond, though. It doesn't seem like it's good news. They're terrified, and rightfully so, because we're told in the scriptures, anytime God really reveals his glory, his power, his righteousness, his holiness, it's so different and it's so powerful, people fall on their knees in fear. And the shepherds are no different. They're getting a taste of God's glory through that angel, and they're terrified, but they're also terrified because nothing like that's happened for 400 years. God's been silent to Israel. That we're told he spoke all through the Old Testament, through the prophets, through the messengers, but then for 400 years, the prophets ended, the miracles ended. God is quiet until he speaks loudly through the Word. That the Word became flesh there in Bethlehem. And the angels show up and they speak loudly to those lowly shepherds. And the shepherds are awestruck and terrified that the things that they had heard of former years was happening right in front of them. And as they hear that message, they're scared. But did you catch how the angel responded? We're told in verse 10 that the angel said to them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people." The angel says, don't worry, don't be scared. And why? He said it's because I have good news. And what is the good news? The good news is Emmanuel. It's that God's with us. He says that's good news. Good news that you don't have to be scared of. God's with us. He's here. And I think today that's still such good news. God's with us. He's here. And you need not fear even if you walked in with anxiety, because God is accessible and available to you right here in this place. So the angel says, fear not, because God is here. And that is good news that you will only find in this book. In fact, I would dare say every other religion in the world, they will give you bad news. Because what's their news? Their news is that God's far away. He's distant. He's far removed from you. And the only way you can get close is if you get your act together and you do all this stuff and you work really hard, and then maybe you might get to meet God. But what's the good news of Christianity? It's that God came down to us. He's here. He came near. And in order for you to be put into his presence, all you have to do is receive. You don't have to give. You don't have to do, because Christ gave all of it for you. Jesus Christ lived the perfect life that you and I are incapable of living. And he died that death that the Bible says we deserved because of our sin. And he was raised on the third day, and in doing so, he received new life, and anyone who receives Jesus receives new life with him. And that's good news. It's good news that the messenger says will bring great joy. Tomorrow morning, when you open up gifts with your kids, I'll have kids in my house. I don't know what your house will be like. I would dare say all of our houses will have joy in the morning. If you open up gifts, a natural reaction is to be filled with joy as you open up that good gift from someone who loves you. But while there will be joy in my household tomorrow, I will tell you it's not going to be great joy. It's going to be little joy. You might say, Jonathan, it's because you're like a cheapskate, you didn't give good gifts. No, my gifts are going to be good. They're going to be good gifts. But it will not provide great joy. It'll bring little joy. And the reason I call it little joy is because the joy will only last for a little while. What will happen is they will receive those gifts, they'll open them, people will be excited. Give it a few days, they won't be playing with them as much. Give it a few weeks, those toys are going to get a little dust on them. Give it a few months, Bethany and I are going to say, we need to get rid of it and give it to Goodwill because we just got so much stuff around here. And this is how earthly toys and gifts work. We get gifts, we give gifts, and we pursue gifts constantly. They give little joy. But the perfect gift of Jesus Christ, it's lasting joy. Which if you don't hear me on anything today, I hope you hear that the perfect gift of Jesus Christ brings joy that lasts forever. The gift of Jesus Christ will give you joy that will last forever. Psalm chapter 16, verse 11, we're told that in your presence, O Lord, there is a fullness of joy, a joy that cannot be compared to any other joy you'll receive on this earth, because the joy Jesus Christ gives you is being reconciled and forgiven by a mighty God, and then to actually know him and have him indwell in you and change you and walk in relationship with you for the rest of your days. And that's joy you cannot experience anywhere else in this world. That if there really is a God and you can know him, the one who made you, and he knows how you're wired and why you're wired that way, and you can know him, there is no other joy that will compare to that. And in Jesus Christ, you can know him. You can know him, and you can experience a great joy, not the little joy that we're going to get tomorrow. So my question is, what kind of gifts have you been chasing? Because there's a perfect gift available right here and right now. And we're told there's good news, because if you need a gift and you're in search of some joy, the angel tells us great news. It's that there's good news will lead to great joy, but he says it's for all the people. The gift of Jesus Christ is for all the people, not some of the people. It's for everyone. And I think about other gifts so often that we pursue in this world, they're not for everybody. We can't all get the gifts we want here on this earth. I hope you've gotten to watch some Christmas movies over the last few weeks. I don't know what your family's like. We like watching Christmas movies. Some of y'all might like the classics. It's a Wonderful Life, or Miracle on 34th Street. Or maybe it's just the Hallmarks movies, which really pick any of them. They're all the same. So you probably, if you like one, you like them all. So I don't know which ones you like, but they're all the same. Or some of you, more sophisticated types, y'all might have taste like me, because one of my favorite Christmas movies is actually Jingle All the Way. Jingle All the Way, a Christmas classic featuring none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Arnold took over comedy about 20 years ago for this movie. And this movie, it caught my attention, and I thought it was funny. And if you're unfamiliar with it, it's Arnold as a dad chasing a gift. He needs a gift. It's Turbo Man. He's looking for Turbo Man to give his child, because he wants his child to receive the little joy. And so he's looking for Turbo Man. But as many of you parents know, sometimes we can't find Turbo Man, because there's always that gift that we want that we just can't find, that they run out of inventory. They run out of stock, or perhaps it's even too expensive and we can't pay the price to receive it. This happens every year. But the good news of the perfect gift is it's in full supply. Jesus Christ and his grace does not run on low. And you can receive it tonight if you need it, because the perfect gift is available to anyone at any time. The perfect gift is available to anyone. If you notice who's the one receiving the gift, the offer of salvation and the invitation to meet Jesus, it's shepherds. And what was it about those shepherds, and why does that matter? The shepherds were considered second-class citizens by most. They were viewed as unskilled, uneducated, lowly, yet God sent his messenger to them. In fact, religious pious types, they thought they were actually dirty because they weren't able to uphold the religious Pharisaical expectations for them to do all these things that they made up because they had a 7-day-a-week job and they had to go out there and get dirty. But it wasn't clean enough for all the religious Jews. They viewed them as dirty outsiders. Yet the Son of God says, come on over. I want you to come spend some time with Jesus. And why were the shepherds called to that moment in that time? It's to make sure you and I know in this time, God has room for you too. Doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter if you haven't been in church since this time last year or the year before or year before. That God's grace is open and available to you right here and right now. That he says, you can come and meet with Jesus. And you might say, Jonathan, that sounds too easy. That's why we call it amazing grace. It makes no sense. But that is the perfect gift of salvation through Jesus Christ. And Jesus wanted us to know that this is the way it is. That's why in John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus told us, and he told his disciples, he said, I am the light of the world. He said, whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will receive the light of life. Now, Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. And why does he use that word world? It's because he meant the whole world. Jesus Christ is the hope of salvation for anyone, anywhere, at any time. And he says, I'm the light of the world. He wants to light up your life and everyone's lives that are here in this place, but also scattered around the globe. Jesus, the Son of God, saw the darkness and he did not flee, he ran to it. And he says, whoever follows me will not walk in darkness. And some of you, perhaps tonight, you're walking in darkness. Maybe you've got all kinds of anxiety and fear. Maybe you've got anger and resentment. Maybe you're dealing with loss. Maybe you're dealing with lust, envy, greed, discontentment. Whatever darkness you're in right now, Jesus said you don't have to walk in it anymore. Because Jesus is the light of the world, and he says, whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but instead will have the light of life.